Hey everybody, it's Carson here from CarbonWeb, and today we're going to be talking about outlining a workflow, and more specifically, outlining that first most imperative, that vital workflow to your business, that one that kind of leads to everything else. So with that, let's hop right into it. All right, so first things first, there's a couple questions that I think we should address just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We all know exactly kind of what we're talking about, what terminology we're using, and this will just help when you're kind of thinking about your workflow. So, what is a workflow? Simply put, a workflow is the process of doing something from start to finish. Very simple concept, but it's important for us to understand. The idea of a workflow is getting something from start to finish and completing it all the way through. Next, it's going to be why do we need the workflow? What is the reason for having it? So workflows are important because they help us understand who, what, how, and when something is going to be completed. Among other things, it's basically giving us the whole scope of what's being done and everything included in that whole entire process. So what workflow is vitally important for those reasons because it gives us a great scope of everything included within it. And then what is a trigger? So a trigger in a workflow is the action event or thing that's causing this process or this workflow to begin. It's what's going to kick off, what's going to start. It's that first thing that happens. And then what is an action? So an action in a workflow are the task steps or things that you're doing throughout a process to bring it to a point of completion. It's kind of all those different intricacies that are involved in that said process. And then finally, what is an outcome? So an outcome in a workflow is the result of an action. It's an instance where one thing occurred as a result of something else. So that's kind of going to be like if this happens, then this happens, and that is your outcome. All right, so now we've got those first questions kind of out of the way. Let's kind of dive into what's next in the outlining the workflow process. All right, so with step one of how to outline your process or outlining your process, the first thing we're going to want to think about is establishing that most primary, most important process that we have in our business, the one that kind of kicks off everything else or leads to everything else. In a lot of businesses, this is going to be your lead flow workflow. So how leads are coming to you and what you're doing with them next. All right, and then today for this demonstration, we're going to be using the idea of an ice cream shop as our example business because for one, who doesn't love ice cream? And two, I think it's a very relatable way to tie all these concepts together for everyone that's watching, no matter their skill level or experience with the idea of workflow automation. All right, and now that we've established what process we're going to be working on today, for us, it's going to be a new customer coming into our ice cream store. The next thing we need to do is identify the variables that are inside of that process, kind of the things that are all at play that are going to play into this process. To dive into that, there's kind of a few different things that we kind of need to identify, we want to point out, we want to get kind of ahead of, so that way when we go to start outlining the process, actually, we already have these things on our mind and we know what they are. So we want to think about things like the start point and end point, the handoff points within the process or benchmarks, those natural breaking points, as well as what's commencing the process, what's starting it, what is the trigger of the process. Additionally, who's involved and what parts of the process are they involved in, and then what materials or resources are involved, as well as the tools or software required to do said task or complete said workflow. And then additionally, what information is needed for us within this process. So kind of think about the information, the questions, the different types of info that you're going to be intaking, whether it be at the beginning of the process, the end of the process, or during the process. All those things we want to think about. So referring to the idea of us working on an ice cream store or working at an ice cream shop and creating the workflow for that, these are kind of going to be the main variables that are at play here. So, the start of that workflow when a customer enters the storefront, the end of it when the customer finishes the checkout process, those breaking points, there's really going to be three. So, when you come in, you do samples, and after that, you get your order, and then the payment process towards the end. Then the trigger of this process really is going to be when the customer enters the shop, when they're looking to order ice cream. And then who's involved? So in my mind, I think there's like three people that need to be involved in an ice cream store at least. So somebody that's greeting, handing off the samples, that kind of process. Then someone that's doing the scooping, adding the toppings, doing all of that. And then the cashier. And in my mind, this would be an efficient way to run an ice cream shop. Certainly, you could run it with less people, but to me, this would be an ideal workflow. And then with that, the materials or resources involved kind of goes without saying. And then tools and software, we're obviously going to need an ice cream scooper for scooping ice cream. Now that's pretty irrelevant to this whole idea of workflow automation, but for the sake of outlining this workflow, I figured it would be good to point it out. And additionally, a POS or point of sale system and a cash register. You're either going to have both or at least a cash register if you're an ice cream store, but these days most places do have some type of modern point of sales POS system. Then additionally with the information, so do they want a sample? That's definitely a question we want to ask and something we want to be aware of. The eating method, so cone or dish, that makes sense. Waffle or regular if you are doing a cone, the number of scoops, the ice cream flavors, and of course, do you want toppings, yes or no? Those are all important variables, questions, and information that we're going to take in throughout the process that we want to be aware of. So that's why we're identifying all those here. And so once you've done this, we're ready to move on to step 3. All right, so now that we've laid out all the variables that kind of go into the process, we're ready to start actually visualizing and outlining it. So to do that, we're going to need a tool, a mind mapping tool of some kind that's going to help us kind of plug, play, drag things around, and be able to make edits to this process once we lay it out. So with that being said, let's talk about a couple options you have. All right, so option 1 is really just going to be to head to Google, go do a search for free mind mapping tools, and kind of play around in Google and find a tool for yourself. And then another option you do have, if you are a Monday.com user, there are a bunch of different cool apps that are available on the Monday Marketplace that you could choose from. So you could do this right inside your Monday workspace if that was something you wanted to do. And then lastly, if you'd rather just use the tool that we're using here today, what I'm in right now that you're actually looking at, that's going to be Figma. You could head right on over to figma.com/pricing to get started and learn more. But you can get started for free and do exactly what we're doing right now without having to pay a dime. So let's get on to the next step of the process, number 4. All right. And now that we've identified what mind mapping tool we'd like to use, we're ready to kind of move forward with actually visualizing our workflow and visualizing our outline. So to do that, we're going to need a key that's going to help us kind of identify all the different aspects of our workflow and keep things uniform. So here's a quick example of what that can look like. So thinking about this, we're going to want to identify something for our trigger, something for outcomes, something for the different steps, and then additionally for primary and secondary actions. These are going to kind of be the 5 key pieces to our workflow that are going to we're going to be able to plug these things in, and then in the future, you'll be able to expand with these same ideas. You'll be able to add on to your workflow and enhance it. All right, so the moment we've all been waiting for, we're at the point where we're ready to start doing our workflow outline and actually doing everything that we've been talking about. First, we had to establish what our process was that we wanted to do this with, and then we had to identify all the different variables within said process, and then we created the key after finding our mind mapping tool. So now let's dive in. All right, so we have that key that we talked about before, and like we said in the beginning, every workflow starts with some kind of trigger. So let's identify our trigger. For us, for the workflow that's going to be for this ice cream shop, it kind of makes sense that the customer entering the store or entering the ice cream shop is going to be where our workflow starts. All right, fantastic. All right, and then after the trigger, there's going to kind of be 2 different paths that a customer is going to take when they come in the store. So let's pull out 2 different, we're going to pull out these 2 different things here. So first things first, they're either going to already know what they want, or they're going to want to try a sample. Want to try a sample. Perfect. And then we can use this to draw lines from one thing to another so that we can kind of get a better visualization. All right, and then after that, we're going to need to establish what the outcome of these 2 steps is going to be. So regardless, I'm pretty sure they're going to have the same kind of outcome, which is going to be that they're ready to order. And then we can draw our lines back from here and neaten this up a little bit. All right, fantastic. So this is kind of that first little bit of the flow, and then what this kind of, we need to think about those different breaking points or handoff points. So right here, this was kind of that greeting and sampling breaking point, so I think it's time for us to add another step. And so what's that step going to be? Well, the next step after you've kind of done this in an ice cream shop, I think, is really identifying the method that you want to consume your ice cream in. So for this, it's going to be pick a method. Now, if you were to think about that in a more elongated fashion, it'd be picking a method of consumption. But for the sake of keeping things short and sweet here, that's what we're going to do. All right. And then if we drag this here, just to drag that connection. All right, fantastic. So this is kind of the start of what we're going to want to do here. And I'll get back to you guys when we've kind of outlined the entire ice cream shop flow. And then we'll review. All right, and welcome back. I finished kind of putting together the ice cream shop workflow. So we'll review it really quick and kind of just think about all the different things that are in play here. So like we started off with our trigger, and then we moved on to our two different kind of opportunities when a new customer comes in the store, and then what that outcome is. We moved on to that step, and then we'll kind of just follow this process through. So cone or dish, and then there's an extra step. If you go cone, you kind of need another decision to be made there. From there, we're ready for the size or number of scoops, and then so we move on to that step. Regardless of the number of scoops, they're going to be ready for scooping afterwards. And so we're going to need to pick our flavors. We're not going to dive into that because obviously, depending on an ice cream shop, you could have custard, soft, hard. There's a lot at play there, but just thinking about picking your flavor at, how many scoops. And these are all things that we identified in the beginning that we need to be aware of in terms of the different variables inside of our process. So after we pick our flavors, we're going to move on to toppings. And if we want toppings, yes or no. If we do want toppings, that's going to be an additional step, and it's probably going to cost an extra charge. And either way, after here, we're ready to pay. And so we're going to move on to the checkout. And then, from the checkout, that's really kind of where this workflow ends. So, we started off with the greeting and sampling. Then we went to the ordering and acquiring of your goods. And then now we're here at the checkout, the purchase, the completion of the order. So when we're thinking about that, this really is the end of the primary process for an ice cream shop. You come in, you order your food, or you order your ice cream, you pay for it, and then you enjoy it. And that really is the holistic process. Now, there are numerous different ways that we can improve upon this, which we'll kind of go over in that next step of this video. All right, and then really quick before we go into ways to add on or enhance or to build upon your workflow outline, I want to kind of just make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with kind of the idea of this ice cream shop and how this can apply to your business. So with that being said, we kind of keep an eye on these red dots down here as we're scrolling through this outline. We will kind of get an idea on how these things can apply to your business. So in this first kind of stage, what we're doing is, it's a new customer coming into a store is the equivalent of a new lead for a service-based or an online-based business. So thinking about it like that, this first kind of step or section is really ultimately going to be kind of that new lead validating the interest of a new lead kind of step of a workflow. And then kind of following from that, this next kind of stage here is really the budgeting and understanding the needs of your customer, of your client, and kind of getting a feel for what it is that they're looking for from you. And then kind of carrying on from that, doing the work or the service or providing the product, whatever it is, kind of actually the actual workings of that process. And this is kind of on a greater scale. And from there, kind of you can think about the idea of adding toppings as kind of being your final touches, your revisions, or your last minute add-ons to the product or service that you are already doing. And then kind of finally, the checkout process really is going to be your payment, your invoice, and your completion of services step in your process. So if you think about all these things, you think about how they can apply to your business, it will make a lot more sense for sure. All right, and then the final step of our process for outlining our workflow is really going to be kind of assessing the outline that we've just created and looking for ways that we can optimize it further. So let's dive in. All right, so we're at our starting point of our workflow. We're at the trigger point. We're ready to start kind of overviewing and assessing where we can improve upon things. So obviously there's not really much in terms of in this workflow example that we can improve upon with the trigger. Obviously we can improve the way things are coming into the business in terms of marketing and lead flow and lead generation. But in terms of this trigger, there's not really much that we can add or improve upon. So if we kind of keep moving along the process, so in the very beginning of the process, there's a few things I think that would be very good to do for us in terms of this ice cream shop. I think when customers arrive, identifying whether they're new or returning visitors right away would be a great asset to the business. And then kind of with that, if they're new, inviting them to follow us on social media for an extra free scoop today. And kind of the idea here is we're driving additional social interaction, we're adding more value to our business, and we're also, if you ask me, giving a free scoop away to somebody as soon as they on their first visit. There's not much you can get better than a free scoop of ice cream. So it's a great kind of way to add value to your business and add value into your process. And ultimately, those scoops of ice cream are going to benefit you long term because likely that same person that's following you is now going to end up maybe even posting what they just got on social media. And then if we keep moving through our process here, something else I've identified along the way is kind of following up on that idea of getting them to follow us. So at the scoop section, kind of building it into your employee workflow, asking them, are you following us on social media? If not, follow us right now and you'll get a free scoop, a free extra scoop for free. So kind of that same idea, but kind of building it into your employees' everyday workflow. It's something there, it's on their mind, so they'll actually do it. And then to continue adding value into your process and adding, value to the customer experience, maybe adding a flavor of the month as a promotion of some kind, a percentage of those sales go to a local organization. This could be a great way for you to not only build influence within your community and add value back to the community, but give people a reason that may not otherwise show up to come out and support that organization and also purchase your products. So it's kind of a great value add all the way through the process or workflow. And then kind of towards the end of the process, there's a few things I think that we should absolutely be looking to add. First of all, integrating a CRM to the checkout process to be able to create customer profiles and be able to kind of market to existing customers for the future. And then with that, kind of at checkout, capturing email or a phone number to add to an outreach list. In the modern day, I think with an ice cream shop, an SMS marketing would work much better than email, but whatever you can do is better than not doing anything. So kind of with that, that first outreach, kind of including something like a thank you and offering them a limited time discount to get them back in the store as soon as possible. And additionally, asking them for a review because, if you never ask, you'll never get them is kind of the way that we like to think about things over here. If you don't ask for reviews, most of the time, people appreciate the service, or if they have a good experience, no one writes about good experiences. They only go and write about bad ones. So asking for a review would be a great way to kind of get more social proof out with your business. And so with that, once you have that email and those or a phone number, you're able to create outreach flows for customers to engage them and encourage repeat business. And then kind of with the idea of those outreach flows, there's kind of, there's vast ways that you can build upon this. But for the idea of this ice cream shop, um, adding emails like your favorite flavors back, or we're open for the season, new flavors just dropped, limited time discounts, holiday, seasonal, or general promotions of any kind, like promoting your monthly flavor idea, perhaps. Hiring emails, you're looking for new employees. The best place to look is in your client base because those are the people, or customer base, because those are the people that already know who you are and likely appreciate you as a company and as a business and as a provider of goods of some kind. Then additionally, referrals, maybe you have some type of referral program. Even at an ice cream shop, I could see how that could work out really well. I bring 4 people in to get ice cream with me. Maybe somehow I'm getting a free ice cream cone. It's ways to think about ways to enhance what already exists in your business. An ice cream shop already exists, already has a pretty standardized workflow, but this is our way of visualizing it, putting it not literally on paper, but putting it on paper. So that way we can think about ways to increase, optimize, and enhance what already exists. All right, so it seems like you've made it to the end of the video. So first of all, congratulations. You now have a better understanding of your overall workflow and everything that is involved within that. Now, with that being said, the hard part's over, and with that representation, you now have a greater understanding of what your workflow actually looks like. And additionally, you have a great starting point in which you can expand upon in the future. Now, with all that being said, you're at a great point where if you're not ready to move forward, you don't have to, but you have that outline for whenever you are. But if you are looking to add automation to your process that you've just outlined, we'd love to have a chat with you and talk to you about what the next part of your process could look like. And with that being said, you could book a demo at demo.carbonweb.co/workflow for a free consultation. We'll dive into your outline, take a look at it, and really just see what opportunities lie there for you.
And then additionally, this entire video was brought to you by the Digital Directive, our weekly newsletter on all things workflow, digital process automation, and Monday.com. So if that sounds interesting and you're not already subscribed, feel free to join that. You can subscribe at the bottom of our homepage at carbonweb.co/home. Scroll to the bottom, you'll see it right there. Otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe to this video and let us know what you guys want to see next.